Okay, so welcome everybody to today's session of panel 3. I'm Clemens Rohde, so today you'll not be hosted by the usual panel leaders of panel 3, Hannes and Reinhard, because they are either absent or are presenting in parallel in another panel. So I hope still you will stay here in panel 3 for 3 very interesting presentations we're going to see today on the topic of energy management. We're going to see some empirical evidence on how energy management practices can help companies to increase their efficiency, to increase their competitiveness, how energy management practices are implemented in companies. So I'm very much looking forward to 3 very interesting presentations. And we're going to start with our first presentation, which is from Annika and Gustaf. Annika is an energy consultant and Gustaf is a coordinator working at the Swedish Energy Agency, and they will present us results from a 4-year-long project where almost 300 small and medium-sized enterprises have been coached to save energy. And I'm very happy to see the results of that paper. I think it had very much links to what I just presented yesterday on energy efficiency networks in Germany. So I'm looking forward to the presentation, to the results. I hope I'm going to learn something interesting. And Annika and Gustaf, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So this is Gustaf speaking, and with me we have Annika.
Hello.
And we'll present this together in separate locations, but we'll do our best. Our presentation will shortly cover the energy efficient network method. We'll talk about results and measures that we've encountered so far. Coaching as a method, energy management systems, and we'll finish off with conclusions. So to start off with, as the introduction said, this program has been running since 2016, and we'll finish up around the new year 2020-21. We've targeted 300 small and medium-sized enterprises with an energy consumption larger than 1 gigawatt hour per year. So that has been the cutoff limit for businesses. We've done this through 25 regional organizations that have employed coordinators to run the networks. And it has also involved approximately 20 energy experts. The overall target for the project has been to reach an average reach 15% more energy efficiency in the companies, and also implement a systematic energy management system. As a help, as a support for the companies, they've received 150 hours of expert help.
Yes, and I've been one of the energy experts. I had 2 networks. One has been it's been residential buildings, and then the other one was food industry companies. They all committed voluntarily, and they started 2016. They started to do energy mappings to understand how the energy is used in the plant. And then they also got measures to do for get better efficiency. Then they did an action plan together with us. In the network, they meet 3 or 4 times a year, and every time one of the industries are hosting. So you can walk around and see how the production is and what they have done. And every time also they decided on one topic to discuss, to dig into. We have about 35 networks running now, and about 10 companies in each. Each network has one coordinator, an energy coach, and the coordinators and energy coaches has also had meetings every month to learn and help each other. So it's not only the companies who have learned a lot during those 4 years, it's also been a very good project for us to have been involved and also learn things all those years. So now we are in the end, as Gustaf said. So yes, he will present some results we can see already. Oh, that was mine as well. Yeah, this is how the networks are built up. We have with the 35 networks and the coaches and the coordinators. So we talk to each other, everybody, so we split knowledge.
Yeah, so an overview of the results so far, based on 243 of the companies involved. So we had 2 targets of implementing different measures. So we have the top one implementing technology measures, and the second one, which we target of implementing management measures, and the top one has almost 4 times as many technology measures implemented so far as management measures. And also, as stated earlier, we had the overall target of 15% more efficient energy use, which we've reached 11.1%. Compared to key figures, which we'll come back to, although the actual reduction has been just 0.4. Talking further about the measures, we have some data about planned measures, which has an even more skewed ratio between technology measures and management measures, reaching 6, 7, 10 times as many management measures for the planned future. There's also been a variety of companies involved, as Annika talked about earlier, and therefore we've measured their energy intensity. It's followed up by key figures, and some ratios have been tons of megawatt hours per tons of product turnover or heated surface, and it's all been picked out by the experts along with the companies, so it should be a relevant key figure for the company. And as recently mentioned, we reached a target reached a result of 11.1% energy efficiency relative to those key figures. And as a control measure, we also calculated the measures that have been implemented and reached a result of 7.6%. And obviously, it would be ideal if those 2 numbers lined up, but as I'm sure all of you are aware, they rarely do, because of a number of reasons, but perhaps the main reason would be that the key figure that the company has picked is not linear, doesn't have a linear correlation with the energy use. But it's still in the right direction, so we should still feel confident in the results. We also have summed up the planned measures, and together with the carried out measures, it should add up to 160 and 170 gigawatt hours per year, which still is lower than the overall target, but since it's still time left of 2020 with the special circumstances we have, we'll have to see what the results will be in the end after the project is finished. Just going to touch briefly on the more efficient use of electricity, as this is a target as well. But since the result of this is also 10.3 is quite close to the overall result of energy efficiency, so that follows more or less the same pattern. Here we have also calculated the measures that have been implemented, and we should have a confident number here as well. When we look at the target of reduced CO2 emissions, though, we have a goal of 10%. Here we see a slightly larger relative number than energy efficiency, and this is, indicates that the companies are switching to what we can call greener energy carriers, as well as reducing the overall use relative to key figures. When we look at the amount and the overall estimated energy savings of those measures, we can see that heating, lighting, and ventilation, along with cooling and processes, are the areas of the biggest savings. But relative to the amount, the number of completed measures, we can see that processes and cooling for the companies that have been involved in our project has been the areas of biggest impact. That might be due to some legislative changes in Sweden around cooling, and because of the companies that are involved in the project. But for our group, these have been the results.
Yes, I can say that it's been very successful to have the coaching and the network as a method. It's quite crucial that the chemistry between the coordinator and energy experts is there. It helps. Those networks, it's been smoother planning and a better climate at the meetings. To start, we had prepared PowerPoints that we were presenting, and it was quite stiff at the meetings the first year. And then we, both experts and coordinator, had a workshop about how to make meetings more fun and more things happening and so on, so you get more energy in it. And it really opened up that we could be free to do our own PowerPoints. We can have more discussions. We learned how to make PowerPoints even better. Excuse us that it's quite small here in our PowerPoints, but we learned a lot, and you could actually see that the energy helped in the climate at the meetings. And it also, one thing is that it's quite good also that you keep the group, and if you have a guest coming to make a presentation about some technical stuff, the person is just there during the presentation and not during the whole day that you have a workshop, because otherwise they don't want to open up and share what's not working and so on. It's you have to build the trust in the group first, and then it's quite good that they talk about what's not working and help each other. In one of my networks, they even started to do business with each other. So it was quite interesting to be there and see it. We also focused a little in the beginning about soft measurements. We even had to have a meeting about what is soft measurements, so we could use that a little bit more, because that is also one thing we have learned, that if we have started to focus on that bit in the beginning, we might have come a little bit longer. We don't know. It could be this is the way you have to do it. I don't know, that you learn from your faults. But if you get the company's leading comes in and understand energy question, it's much easier to spread the energy efficiency in the company. So, and there is not really a quite correlation between energy management system and how much you save, because I think it's also because it's small and medium companies. So it also depends on what people is there in the company, what they're interested in, and if they already have a management system, it's easier to hang on to it. So it's yeah, sometimes they do things a little here and a little there, but in the end they all have learned a lot, and you could actually see big changes. Yeah, you can take the next. So we have a energy step to calculate how long they have come on the energy management systems. You can't really see the steps here, but we can see that the same thing as that I say. They do a little here and a little there, but still they go forward. So Gustaf, you can click on the next. So we hope that in the end of this year, because this is measures from 2019, so hopefully they have already got a little bit longer to the right side here. Yes, and then we have the last slide, I guess, the conclusions. Yes, Gustaf, they will hopefully.
Yeah, I think we still have a good chance to achieve a set of the goals at least. It all depends on the fall here as well, and a lot of external factors that we don't really can control. But not the baseline, the base job of the larger part of the project, it looks promising.
But we measure a lot of things, so there's a lot of things to dig into if you want to look at it even more. And I think it's also good that you have 4 years to do this, so they really have the time to understand it, because it's small and medium companies, family owned, not that many people is working there maybe. So now they understand, and when they understand, they also focus more on this question, because they can see what they can win with it. And I think coaching is vital, because they say when you come and you remind them to work on it, it's good, they like it. It's like a PT, a personal trainer for, I mean, you have to work with the energy question all the time. It's like you have to, if you could be running, you have to train all the time. You can't keep up otherwise. There's always things to do. I think the time is out, yes?
Yeah, thank you, Annika and Gustaf, for the interesting presentation. Normally, I would block all the presentations in one and then have a longer discussion afterwards. But as Annika has to leave in a couple of minutes, my proposal would just be to have a short slot for questions and answers specifically on that presentation. I understood Gustaf will be there for the discussion, so the project will be well represented also in the overall discussion we have after all the 3 presentations. But as we have 2 pretty specific questions also on the chat already to Annika and Gustaf, I would like to take the opportunity now to ask them. To all the audience we have around here, if you have questions, just post them in the chat. I will group them and sometimes make 1 out of 2 and so on, and ask them to the participants. If you agree a question is an important and good one, you can use the like function. So don't ask the same question again, but just like the question. I see this seems to be more important, and I will ask it with more rigor to the panelists, so they will answer. Having said that, the first question is whether the coach or the accompanying engineers, whether they provide access to technical support, some perhaps also tools for energy system assessments, for example, steam systems, pump system, fan, compressed air system. Specifically, food industry is something mentioned here, but there might be more generic also as an answer. Also to establish the operational efficiency of those systems. So is there support in that respect? And perhaps that goes to Annika, I would suppose.
Yes, we had about 20 energy experts. So if I couldn't really help the company if there was a specific question. I could also always ask the other ones, because we were, yes, if you have 20 energy experts, there's always one who can know what to do. So yes, and they had 150 hours each for the 4 years, so they could use them as they wanted.
Yeah, very good. And as a follow-up, also, there's a question about benchmarking. So the question of whether you can compare the companies. Does benchmarking work, or did you use it? And would that be an opportunity? Perhaps you can elaborate a bit on that.
Yes, we have networks that is just one kind of companies in, so they can benchmark between them. It's the grocery stores, for one example, and I had one carrot, what do you say, growing carrots, and there's also one in Gotland, so they can help each other with how to store the carrots more energy efficient, sort of. So you can be quite specific in the questions, and it's fun to learn from each other.
Perhaps.
And I think also that energy is not a question that you can benchmark, because it's no concurrence. What do you say, Gustaf? You don't compete with the energy, it's more the products. So you can actually help each other.
Mm-hmm. One follow-up question: when you said you had networks where companies from the same sector or even competitors were in, and in our initial pilot in Germany, we always were very strict about having no competitors in one network, just to be open in the exchange and so on. Mm-hmm. Perhaps you can say something about your experiences with having a sectoral network here. We have them right now in Germany too, but I would love to hear experience with a sectoral approach there.
Some of the companies didn't want to be in the same as a bakery company. I know they wanted to be in another one. So there have been questions about it, and then they just choose another network. But if you say grocery stores, they are quite competitive, but they like to learn from the others as well. So they are still helping each other. Mm-hmm. And as I said, when it's about energy, it's not that much the product.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, thank you. I don't see any other questions from the auditorium right now. So thank you for the Q&A right now. We will have another discussion afterwards with all the panelists. So we will now proceed with our next presentation, actually, and which is from Werner König from Germany, from the REZ, and I'll just have to pull up my description here. Werner is a sociologist and research associate at Reutlingen University in Germany. He's also a PhD student at the University of Vienna and deals with cultural aspects of institutionalization of energy efficiency in industrial SMEs. And I think this is a perfect follow-up to what we've just heard in the presentation on the networks. And I'm very curious to hear your presentation too, Werner. And yeah, the floor is yours right now.
Thank you, Clemens, for your kind introduction. My colleagues from the University of Stuttgart and I have worked on the establishment of energy efficiency in SMEs and the role of energy management in everyday work life. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present some of our results. Liz, could you, I can't operate the slide. Now I can, thank you. Let me briefly start with the research context and the research questions. Our research focused on manufacturing SMEs from Baden-Württemberg. It's the most industrial area in Germany and the in the EU and Europe as well. Our results on energy management represent partial results of a larger work on energy efficiency decisions on SMEs, which is soon to be published. We tried to answer 3 research questions. First, what constitutes energy management for SMEs? Second, what role does energy management play in the decision-making process? And third, and most importantly, how can energy management be institutionalized in SMEs, and what recommendations can be made? Again, just briefly, let me mention our theoretical perspective. We chose in looking at energy efficiency decisions and energy management. First, we used and adopted a framework which I developed previously. It assumes that decisions for energy efficiency are shaped by institutional, organizational, and individuals aspect. And we view energy management as an input and an output of decisions. Second, we do not consider energy management synonymously with the international standard 50001. Although Germany is the #1 in certificates in manufacturing SMEs, we rather define energy management as we take all practices to minimize energy consumptions into account. Yes. Our methods. Our results are based on case study research, which I conducted in 10 manufacturing SMEs on site, and a survey among 500 SMEs with a questionnaire containing around 20 questions and sub-questions. Now, to some of the main results. Most importantly, we asked the SMEs how they perceive energy efficiency being established within their organizations. Just a second, please. Overall, energy efficiency appears fairly well established in the SMEs. The energy demand, that's rather interestingly, does not seem to have a particular influence on how energy efficiency is perceived in the organizations. But the size of the enterprises appears to have a more considerable influence. The smaller the SMEs are, the less energy efficiency is perceived being established. Next, and within the scope of our survey, we asked the SMEs what types of energy efficiency practices they have implemented in the last 3 years, what measures they are currently focusing on, what measures they plan for the future in the following 3 years, and which ones they do not plan to carry out at all. And we distinguished between 6 different kinds of practices: technology investment related, technology organization related, information related, competence related, and behavior related. Interestingly, behavior related practices are almost equally valued high as technical investments. But all other types seem to have considerably less importance for the SMEs. As a next, we asked the companies how important they consider the everyday actions of their employees to contribute to energy savings. And almost 2/3 of the SMEs value the everyday actions as at least important or very important. Furthermore, we examined what strategies the leaders apply to regulate employee behavior, and we identified 4 different types with different logics: raising awareness, motivation, regulation, or automation. Which one is the most effective depends on the competences, the qualifications, and the corporate culture of the individual companies, of course. But measures for raising awareness are the most common and also the most important ones. That's our opinion, and also the opinion of the companies we investigated. While technical automation measures have a particular strong appeal when any other attempts fail. Some words about formal and informal energy management, which I captured during my fieldwork with and in the companies. As I mentioned at the beginning, energy management is often regarded as synonymously with the norm ISO 50001. But however, the case study shows that the SMEs can successfully conduct energy management without committing themselves to a standardized system, but they do it rather informal than formal. The smaller or less energy intense the SMEs are, the likely they aspire to implement the energy management system according to the standard, due to a lack of personal resources and administration certification costs. In addition, the implementation of a formal management system does not necessarily guarantee effectiveness, because unintended consequences may even occur. For instance, when complying with the paragraphs to the norm and pleasing the auditors becomes the dominant frame of reference, or when, for instance, when energy management is reduced to the face of the energy manager. This example I witnessed a few times with the case studies. After all, our case study research indicates that SMEs without a formal energy management system sometimes establish energy management even more effectively than companies which have a certificate. I'm sorry, it doesn't work again. Oh yeah, okay, now. Thank you. In order to capture the influence of external expectations on decisions and energy management, we asked two-step questions to the companies. First, we asked how the companies perceive the importance of energy efficiency for their business environment. And second, we asked what influence this has on decisions. Customers are most likely attributed valuing energy efficiency as very important by the enterprises, and they also have the most considerable influence on decisions for measures. After all, we conclude that external expectations are especially important for strategic and fundamental decisions on SMEs. Furthermore, we assume that these expectations foster the institutionalization of energy management. This is a hypothesis for future research, as we haven't operationalized this properly. But that's an interesting task for the future for us. Next, by carrying out a correlation analysis, we try to identify the factors most relevant driving the establishment of energy efficiency within the SMEs. And although energy efficiency seems less established in smaller enterprises, as we have seen before, the analysis shows only a minor correlation with regard to firm size. The size of the enterprise as well as the energy demand hardly seems to determine the extent to which energy efficiency is established in the enterprises. In contrast, the embeddedness of energy in the corporate strategy and the variety of past energy efficiency practices appear to have a considerable stronger correlation, which was a result that pretty much surprised us. To illustrate the importance of a broad spectrum of different measures, we have created this picture. Of course, the size of the gears may vary according to the companies, but we think it's important to use every kind of practice to create to tap all the energy efficiency potentials and energy reduction potentials. Well, we're right at the end. Our conclusions, just as mentioned, our results suggest that the embedding of energy efficiency in corporate strategy, the use of a broad spectrum of different practices, and the empowerment and involvement of employees as major drivers in establishing energy efficiency within SMEs. And these aspects constitute effective energy management for SMEs, to our mind. Recommendations. Considering the increasing complexity of energy efficiency issues and our conclusion, we think that institutional facilitation of knowledge seems to be crucial in the long run. The establishment of basic knowledge and awareness for energy efficiency should become a mandatory a task of professional education, just as, for instance, energy data management, as well as how to raise awareness within the companies. And we think that the support of chambers and industry associations who work directly with SMEs could prove to be effective in spreading information and knowledge. And, which I forgot in the presentation, of course, energy efficiency networks could play a crucial role in spreading this knowledge as well. Thank you very much. If you have any questions or hints or critiques, you can email right away.
All right, and thank you very much, Werner, for your presentation. I think there was a perfect follow-up with very interesting results looking at SMEs. I think that the topic of energy management, looking at it in a broader context, is very important. You usually have that reflex. Then we talk about energy management is always ISO 50001, and
that's true.
It's so much more than that. And if you see energy efficiency networks or other approaches you have, they are themselves energy management, even with the cycle,
yes,
with the PDCA cycle. So this is this is a crucial issue. I've got one question from the auditorium directly directed to you, and I would ask that now. And perhaps you have some insights if there's a favorable outlook for energy efficiency in the field of the SMEs here. So is there a gap between energy efficiency potentials and their actual implementation? So and do you see this gap rather spreading or closing in the future, also based on your insights in the companies?
That's a tough question. I think it will rather, the gap will rather increase than decrease as the complexity arises.
Okay.
In the long run.
Yeah. I mean, a challenge we always have is that it's pretty hard to get information on actually what's possible in the companies. We see what's implemented on the one hand, yes, in rare occasions, but we don't see what they didn't do. Is that how can we deal with that issue, that we somehow don't really know actually what companies could do if they wanted to, because they're saying, as you said, a lot of companies deem energy efficiency a very important topic and say, yeah, this is important for us, but that's their perception of what they're doing.
It's stunning because sometimes small companies, very low energy intense, do immensely much to increase the energy efficiency, although they don't really have to. On the other side, we have I saw rather huge companies with huge potentials doing rather nothing. How you can detect that without revealing secrets is I have to think about it a little more.
I mean, that's a challenging part. We have other questions in the Q&A session, but I would very much like to keep them for the overall discussion because they are a bit directed to you, but they should be a great opener for discussion. And this is why, for right now, I would love to move on to our next presentation, which is from my dear colleague Joachim, who is working also at Fraunhofer ISI, just as I do. He's working in the broader fields of social sciences and psychology, has been working as a project coordinator for a couple of years now at Fraunhofer Institute, very much also engaged in field research on that topic. And today we're gonna see the results of studies on how companies decide on non-strategic energy efficiency issues based on empirical evidence. So I'm very happy to see your presentation, Joachim, and the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Clemens, for the kind introduction. As already mentioned, my presentation will deal with how do companies decide on non-strategic energy efficiency issues, and I will present the results of an in-depth study of the decision-making process within such companies. I did this presentation and this project and the survey that's underlying the results together with my colleague Elisabeth Dütschke, who cannot be here today. Yeah, and I hope that the remote control is working. Not yet. Yes, okay. And here are the contents that I will address within the course of this presentation. First, I will outline in a classical way the motivation and the research questions that result from this motivation for this project and this study. After that, I will briefly describe the sample our results are based on. Then I will report some descriptive results, followed by the presentation and description of the results of a regression analysis before I come to the main findings and the conclusions that can be drawn from these findings. The motivation is that cross-cutting technologies, for example, buildings or other forms of cross-cutting technologies, have a quite substantial potential for improving energy efficiency. However, such energy efficiency gains typically have no strategic importance for a company because they are not related to the core business of this company or of these companies typically. Otherwise, it wouldn't be cross-cutting technologies. And therefore, understanding and influencing the decision-making on such issues that are related to non-strategic issues is crucial to improve the energy efficiency in the industry or in companies in general. Therefore, I want to address the following research questions. The first is what are the occasions at which such non-strategic decision-making processes on EE measures can be initiated? Following up by the second research question, which internal and external actors are involved and are able to influence such decision processes. And finally, what influences the outcome of these decision-making processes. Now I will briefly describe the sample our analysis is based on. It was a survey, a quantitative survey, based on an online questionnaire that addressed as an example for cross-cutting technologies decision processes related to the energetic refurbishment of office and commercial buildings, so shops and so on. We could gather a net sample, so after cleaning the data up and so on, we had a net sample of 332 decision makers from a wide variety of sectors. However, the sample was mainly it mainly consisted of rather small companies. Below you can see the distribution of the number of employees, and the most frequent class is the companies with between 11 and 50 employees. And accordingly, the sample mainly consisted of owner-managed companies, which accounted for 86.5% of our cases. Here some descriptive results regarding the first research question, which was at which occasions such non-strategic decision processes can be initiated. So in this case, we asked when in the past 10 years, or what in the past 10 years were the occasions at which a refurbishment, whether it was energetically ambitious, so whether it was increased energy efficiency, or whether it only addressed minor refurbishment measures, was not important, because we really focused on occasions for potential increases of energy efficiency. And therefore, here you see the distribution of these occasions that were named for the last 10 years. And as there could occur more than one such occasion, the numbers do not add up to 100%. Please don't be confused by this. And while the objective of energy saving was the most frequently mentioned occasions, there are also a wide variety of other occasions. For example, business change or aesthetic reasons. Business change is if the company expands, if they move to another location, if they change or change the focus of the business, so change the field they are doing business in, or go into new fields of doing business. These were, for example, completely energy unrelated occasions that initiated building or refurbishment measures. And the main takeaway here is the objective of energy saving is important. However, there is a wide variety of other occasions that are absolutely unrelated to energy issues that can also initiate such decision processes. Here are some more descriptive results. In the case, here the question was, in the case that an energetic refurbishment, an ambitious energetic refurbishment would be on the agenda, how would the different actors within the company presumably act, or how would they approach this issue? Quite unsurprisingly, energy and sustainability management would be those who initiated or actively engage in this issue, so would play a quite positive role. Similarly, the facility management. However, what is important here, the important takeaway is these actors are quite rare in the comparison to the size of the sample. So only 445 of the companies have an energy or sustainability management, and only 68 have a facility management. And therefore, I want to draw your attention to the middle management, which is quite more frequent in these companies we surveyed, and which also plays a positive role as an initiator or an innovation champion with regard to energetically ambitious refurbishments. So far, for the internal actors, here are some descriptive results regarding the influence of external actors, mainly so-called intermediaries, so craftsmen, energy consultants, project planners, architects, and so on. And what you can here see is, very unsurprisingly, those intermediaries that are commonly associated to energetic refurbishment, so craftsmen, energy consultants, those are the most trusted ones, while untypical intermediaries, which we also wanted to survey whether they have a substantial influence or can have a substantial influence, like tax consultants or bank advisors, are not considered as someone on whose advice the decision makers would rely on. Okay, so far for the descriptive results, here we also did a regression analysis where the dependent variable was, I would actively advocate that an energy refurbishment is carried out instead of simple repair work. And here you see the independent variables for which we tested whether there is a significant influence or not. Bold printed variables are those which turned out to have a significant influence, which is in particular the perception that this would contribute to climate protection, ensure a future-proof solution. That means that it would avoid future renovations or anticipate them, that it would lead to positive reactions from employees and practical implementation. So whether or not the energetically ambitious refurbishment would be more complicated was also turned out to be a significant influencing factor. Here you can see the results in more detail for the variables that turned out to be significant. And yeah, as I already said, climate protection, future-proof solutions, or the perception of a future-proof solution and positive reaction of employees increased the willingness to champion ambitious renovations, while being in the middle management, which is a position which occurs more often, as I pointed out, than compared to sustainability manager or facility managers, also turned out to be a variable that fostered the likelihood that someone is willing to champion such ambitious renovations. And there is also an interaction effect. So for the middle managers, the perceived additional effort related to energetically ambitious renovations is a significant influencing factor in a negative way, while it is not for the rest of the sample. So this is in particular important for middle managers. And now I already come to the main findings and the conclusions that result from these findings. So beside the objective of energy saving, there is a wide variety of occasions at which non-strategic decision processes are initiated, and therefore it would be crucial that policy measures target such occasions so that we go away from the thinking energy policy has to focus on people who want to improve energy efficiency. There is some other occasions like business change, aesthetic reasons, which could be utilized if they are connected to respective regulations, for example, to trigger energetically ambitious renovations. And as these are non-strategic issues, it is crucial that you have an innovation champion within the company. And based on our descriptive results, the middle management is a promising target group who should be aimed on with such political measures. And these measures should aim to empower the middle management as innovation champions who bring forward such potential energetically renovations. As we saw, the perception that these such ambitious renovations are more complicated to implement in the practice is especially, or is a relevant barrier for middle management. This should be addressed, and as craftsmen and energy consultants and project planners are trusted experts who can counteract such fears, policy measures should aim to activate them in this regard. Thereby, I would like to close or to end my presentation, and I'm happy to answer your questions regarding our results.
Thank you very much, Joachim, for your very interesting presentation. And one comment to the audience. Please ask your questions in the Q&A session. And I will ask one of the questions who has been asked during Werner's presentation, actually, but I will start asking it to you, Joachim, because it's a perfect fit to your conclusion slide, actually. Because you said, yeah, policy measures should aim at activating the experts and so on. So you, at 2 points in your conclusion slide, mentioned policy should act. How? My question is just how. I mean, how can government support the drivers you've seen? What can they do? We've seen yesterday in Christiane Egger's presentation a very famous picture of the donkey with the stick, the carrot, the tambourine, and she introduced the skateboard as the innovation to move the donkey. So what do we need? Sticks, carrots, tambourines, skateboards, all of them together, none of them. Perhaps you can elaborate a bit on that, Joachim.
Yes, I think mixture would be the best way to proceed in this regard. On the one hand, there could be, for example, incentives for craftsmen to have a balanced portfolio of sold technology, so that there might be incentives like subsidies bound on the percentage of energy efficient heating systems or other insulation, for example, that they actually sell. This would be the carrot. This could be also a stick if you make this the other way around, which would be not in favor of this group. However, to empower these intermediaries to influence, for example, middle managers, another way to proceed would be, for example, to include this in curricula of Berufsschule, so the educational, the professional education, which is at least in Germany a thing. So in the education of craftsmen and so on, for example, how to communicate with especially middle managers, to include lessons from research projects, which are the main concerns, like the fear of a more complicated implementation and so on. This could also be a promising way to proceed, and this combined to an overarching measure would be the best way to proceed, I think.
I would love to hand the question over to Werner in his session. The question was originally asked. I mean, you also mentioned in your presentation the topic of education as an example to go forward. But I mean, especially targeting SMEs is, of course, always politically a crucial issue, because you don't want to overburden them. Also, I mean, that's a common thing in German policy. We don't want to overburden everybody with bureaucracy and so on. Perhaps you can give some additional insights also from your field trips. Perhaps you have some direct reaction from the companies you talk to in your case studies on how, to drive that from a policy perspective also.
As I said, and just as Joachim said, I think with education, either with implementing in curriculums, or with the establishment of energy networks. I think that would be, in my opinion, the only way to go. I think you can't really demand energy management or energy efficiency decisions from SMEs.
I would like to add to this point. I think there might be some ways to not demand, but to bring it at least on the decisional agenda of SMEs. For example, if there is some work done in the domain, our example was renovation of the buildings, office and commercial buildings. For example, if there is some work done and there is the need to get a license to do Baugenehmigung, permit, introducing things like at least the provision to have reasoning, to provide a reasoning that non-ambitious measures are taken. This would at least put it in some way on the organizational decision agenda, which is the first and I think one of the most crucial steps in the decision process.
maybe can add one thing. A soft measure would be strengthening the political discourse about energy efficiency, because in Germany you don't hear very much about energy efficiency in the recent years. At least that's my impression. Of course, COVID-19 swallows everything right now, but a strong societal and political discourse would help to create the expectations of customers, of everybody, and so forth, creating the need for SMEs to engage in energy efficiency measures and so on.
Yeah.
I'm a social scientist, so I believe in the power of discourse, of public discourse.
And that leads us almost directly to Gustaf's presentation and to the example of Sweden. And we have seen now that, I mean, the participation in the project as you presented it was a voluntary one on the one hand, but of course you held a big carrot in front of the participating companies by providing them free advice due to the funding of the project. So how do you see the potential of somehow continuing the successful model of networks with the information exchange, with the peer-to-peer learning to a broader basis, perhaps with lowering the amount of carrots you hang in front of the donkey? So this becomes a major driver, especially again targeting the challenges of SMEs, where it might not be on top of the agenda, as we have also seen in the other results. So the topic has some importance, but it's not top of the list probably. So perhaps you can say some words about that from your point of view.
Yeah, I think we're in that phase now where we're trying to solve that issue with the participating companies right now. We obviously we want them to continue to network and share, and there's a certain amount of peer pressure within the network group to do well and not. Yeah, so we're hoping to at least have a lot of those groups still working. As far as other companies go, we're working on taking this model along with a few other projects as well, learnings from those coaching projects to see how we would, as you said, we can't we can't provide them with as many carrots because that's not sustainable in the future. But we can use these networks as promoters for the method, perhaps to get more companies involved, and not only networks surrounding energy efficiency, but perhaps other types of networks where we can have energy efficiency being one topic of the agenda.
I would have a follow-up question, and I would ask that to all three of you, because you probably have some insights in that, and you've made field research. You've, in a way that you either asked people about their individual perceptions, but also, I mean, you really implemented something. And my question is a bit provocative. With all the findings you have, don't we have a strong selection bias in the group we are talking to here right now? So especially, of course, when companies are participating in a pilot project, but even the companies responding to questionnaires, aren't that the ones who already have a positive attitude towards the topic? And perhaps we start with Joachim and then go via Werner to Gustaf to say some words about that, because that seems at least something to be considered for me.
Yes, you address a very valid point. I think this selection bias, it cannot be completely negated or excluded from such surveys. However, we did our best to keep it as low as possible. We tasked a research institute who really did the fieldwork by telephone, so the participants were contacted by telephone. They called through the, as they first called the central contact point, and then they asked through the hierarchy chain to address the appropriate respondent. In addition, we defined the appropriate respondents quite broadly. So we did not only define decision makers as someone who has real influence, we also defined them as someone who is able to influence decisions in a more nuanced way, for example, by preparing decisions before they are actually made on a management level, for example. So this were efforts we took to address exactly the point that you raised to mitigate those selection biases. However, it cannot be completely put out of the picture.
And perhaps, Werner, you can continue, especially perhaps elaborating on the selection of cases you did for your study.
Well, there can be a positive or even a negative selection. For instance, we also brought all the 10 companies together, and they all complained for hours about the non-trustworthiness of energy consultants, for instance. Or you have particular interests in some companies where the leader wants to regulate the behavior of his employees in order to increase the energy savings. Or you have when we got in touch with some enterprises with middle management, there were some people who wanted to persuade the top management to engage in energy efficiency. So that's I think the top load is on the positive selection, or the positive bias, but as I said, there are also negative selection bias possible.
Yeah, thank you, Werner, and perhaps Gustaf, you can continue to elaborate on that from your experiences.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree that there's a large bias in the group. I think we had to work quite hard to convince some of them even to join the networks. On the other hand, I think we're working from the perspective that this can enhance the brand, at least locally, for the companies that participate, and thus make the difference from the ones that are not willing to participate.
Yeah, if I am allowed to, I would add one point to the things I said before. If you remember the occasions that I reported that initiated such decision processes, most of them were not energy related. And in addition, we asked for the most recent occasion how the actually implemented energy efficiency standard was. And yeah, we defined energy champions as someone who, or a company who implemented at least one measure, if it would be the windows or the roof or the heating system, that exceeded the minimum requirements. And if I remember correctly, these cases counted only for 10% of our sample. So this actually illustrates it is to some extent possible to survey to collect samples which are not too biased in the positive direction, I would say.
Yeah, thank you for those comprehensive answers. I've got another topic which struck me a bit also inside the answer. So what Werner said about the issue of trustworthiness of energy consultants. And on the other hand, Joachim had on his slides as the major relied on intermediate actors somehow, the energy consultants. So I mean, we have this challenge here, and we that's a current observation that we ask our questions: are the intermediaries which are active and which companies actually trust to some extent, are they the right ones to answer the questions? And you might have also anecdotal and individual experience which really counteract this storyline. So my question is on how we can improve the trustworthiness, but beside training them better, of course. I mean, they need to be better trained, but somehow make that transparent to the market to increase the trustworthiness of those intermediate actors, because that I see as a major challenge, and this is a topic we always discuss. And perhaps Werner can start, and then Gustaf and Joachim can step in.
I think it's a huge dilemma because SMEs actually need consultants because they don't have the personnel, the competences, and so on. But I think there's a difference between SMEs and larger companies. I think larger companies rather do more trust energy consultants, and you have to think about the situation in SMEs. You have there's a bombardment of inquiries from consultancy companies every day. That's what most of the SMEs told me. So it's really hard to distinguish which one is the right one. And there are also many black sheeps. And in Germany, virtually everybody can call himself an energy consultant. That's what most of the SMEs criticize. So I think it would be necessary to define a clear job profile, who can call himself an energy consultant, and that this would solve the issue in the long run.
Perhaps Gustaf, you can complement that with your experiences on the topic, on the intermediate actors.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have the knowledge paradox to consider as well, that the companies don't really know what to ask for. So they really need a consultant to not only tell them what they should ask them about, but also push them. But I think this, back to Werner's point there, it's difficult to know which one to trust. We have a separate local system in Sweden with state-sponsored energy people, which can sort of verify some of the information, but that consultants are giving. But that's a really tricky area.
Yeah, thank you, Gustaf. Anything to add from your side, Joachim, from your insights, which has
based on our insights, there is not this particular lack of trust, as you already pointed out. The energy advisors were under the top 3 most trusted intermediaries behind craftsmen, and I think this might actually point towards differences caused by the aforementioned bias, because if you are someone who actively participates in networks and so on, you are willing to invest more effort on doing your research regarding energy efficiency measures. On the other hand, if you are not such a person, you are probably really glad that there is someone who tells you what to do, which would be the intermediary. And yeah, therefore, I think for the majority of the small and middle enterprises, I wouldn't say, based on our results, that there is a substantial lack of trustworthiness of intermediaries, in particular energy advisors.
Perhaps as an addition, Bettina Dorendorf just posted in the chat, in the Zoom chat actually, not in the WUWA chat. Anyway, that in Germany, of course, we have by now this list of energy efficiency experts run by the German Energy Agency, for which somehow defines eligibility for programs. So if you want to have an energy, want to be part of a funded scheme, you need to be part of that list. But in the open market of B2B business without funding, still the market is open in Germany. And by the way, I'm happy to receive questions from the audience. Otherwise, it's more a panel discussion with me asking questions, which is fine. I've got lots, no problem. And I think the discussion is going pretty well, but happy to receive your questions from the audience too. And I know situation's a bit more complicated here in this virtual situation. Anyway, we have one outstanding issue from the audience, and there's a question about the major driver for companies, and Joachim has slightly touched that in his presentation, but it's more or less somehow popped up in a lot of sessions already today and yesterday, that the climate issue is one of the major drivers for driving energy efficiency. And my question again to the whole panel is, and you, as I said, that Joachim has answered that partly in his presentation, or completely, not completely. So he's shaking his head. You can't see because he's muted. So my question would be: is climate really a driver for SMEs as big as for policy and for large enterprises with their CSR strategies and so on, where they have usually a different focus and a different business strategy in that context? And perhaps we can just break the round again, starting with Werner and then Joachim and then Gustaf.
I think, yeah, I'm sorry. I think, yes, it's an important topic, because on the one hand, the leaders of SMEs can operate more freely than any manager of a huge multinational company can. So if, for instance, the daughter, the son, or however persuades this man or this woman about the importance of climate change, a lot can happen. And secondly, SMEs, family businesses are oftentimes very much embedded in their local environment, and if this becomes an issue, they do even more, I think. And also, I think just in the recent years, the discourse has become more and more bigger. Maybe it would be even bigger if COVID-19 haven't occurred. I think it's making a huge impact. Also, considering the hot summers in Germany in the last 3 years, we also see it in our organization, at our university. We, for instance, and as Gustaf said, it's quite hard to get in touch with companies interested in this issue, and we see in the last years there's more and more interest because of the discourse about climate change. So I think it's a big driver, and it will be a bigger driver in the future.
Perhaps Joachim, you can follow up and add to that.
Yeah, I very much agree with Werner. I also think, especially in the case of small and middle enterprises, where there is a flat hierarchy, the priorities for such decisions are much more a mirror of the general societal trends, because the head of the company has more direct influence, isn't bound by too much standard procedures and so on. And yeah, the reason why I shook my head when you said we addressed this issue completely was mainly because there was one thing that wasn't significant in our regression analysis, and this was the question or the perception whether this an energetic refurbishment would save money. This turned out not to be significant. It might be related to the way we asked. Maybe the persons don't expect it to save money, but the willingness to accept higher costs, I think, is also somewhat limited. However, I think it is especially important in the case of small and middle enterprises to address this point of effort of implementation. On the one hand, we saw in our results that for middle managers, the expectation of additional effort was a main barrier. And in addition to that, the perception that energetic refurbishment would be a future-proof solution turned out to be a driver, which is somewhat the other way around. So future-proof solutions means you have less effort in the future once you did it one time properly. And yeah, I think this is the way, combined with climate change or the mitigation of climate change, how such decisions should be framed and should be communicated to convince decision makers in SMEs to implement energetically ambitious refurbishments. That it saves effort, not necessarily costs, but effort, and that it is in addition, in combination, something that helps to mitigate climate change.
Yeah, thank you, Joachim, for giving also again a bit more detailed insights in your results. And perhaps Gustaf, you can all add a bit on that from the Swedish perspective.
Yeah, maybe the bit I can add would be that we're seeing that some companies are also interested in refurbishments to gain a better workplace. So for lighting, it would be better for the workers. And yeah, obviously climate change was a emerging climbing question up until March, but I think you have to target different areas of a company as well. Even if they're small, there might be someone who's interested in financial benefits, and another part, especially the brand communications of a company will be related to climate change. But perhaps within the company, there might be different drivers that you don't really need or want to communicate externally as well, such as costs or environmental factors for the workers.
Yeah, thank you all for those answers. I wonder, and this is something which I would like to ask Gustaf again, regarding the Swedish situation of energy efficiency networks, so a bit more specific on that, as I've presented a very similar graph to yours yesterday on the German results, when I showed that a major share of measures in the German networks is of the savings actually is contributed by process heat and CHP and process related measures. Although a major share of measures in numbers of count is still lighting and compressed air and so on. I mean, you had this threshold of energy use, so perhaps you can get some insights on the type of companies which are involved in the networks and whether they are rather energy intensive, also for SMEs, or rather non-energy intensive companies, and how that relates to the measures which have been implemented.
Well, there's such a spread, really. We have a few companies that are really energy intensive, such as sawmills that have to dry their wood, or how you call that process. but also down to, like Annika was talking about earlier, grocery stores, companies that have shops to rent out, so spaces. So there's such a variety, and that's why we've had our dealings with finding relevant key figures for them all. So I would say it's hard to have too much general conclusions among the companies, since there are such a big spread. So what we really focus on is the baseline measure, and hopefully a good result here by the end of 2020.
Yeah, thank you, Gustaf, for your answer. I have one final question in the Q&A session. I will give everybody a short round on that, and afterwards we are already at the end of our session. And the question is whether you see approaches where especially consultants could go beyond the energy topic actually and help industry with broader sustainability issues. A lot of those issues are interconnected, materials, resources, water, and so on. So would you see potential that businesses value that as a more integrated package, or because the energy people are the people which are very, very active in that respect, it would not really help the issue at all? Perhaps you can elaborate on that a little bit. Perhaps Joachim, you can start with that.
Yeah, I think this would be very valuable if this could be implemented. However, I would be cautious with putting more aspects into the decision process, because that makes things more complicated. And yeah, as it turns out, the perception of things being more complicated is not a good thing for achieving success. Therefore, maybe my advice would be to focus primarily on energy issues. And yeah, I would be cautious with adding additional aspects, although this might be interesting for a subgroup who is very keen on sustainability in all areas.
Werner, perhaps you have some insight on that from your research.
I think consultancy will get even more important in the future because of the tendencies of the companies, also of small companies to climate neutrality. Aspects like accounting measures and all that kind of stuff is even more complicated than simple energy efficiency measures right now. So I think it will become a huge topic in the future for consultancy.
Yeah, thank you, Werner, and now Gustaf.
I like the idea. It will become even more complex for the consultants. So perhaps it will, like Annika's setup of a network of experts, that everyone doesn't have to know everything, but you have to know who to consult in a bigger group, so you can get the best advice.
Yeah, thank you, Gustaf. Now we've actually reached the end of our session. I think we gained great insights into energy management practices in SMEs, about decision making, how decision making is done in those companies, which instruments can help companies also to foster the uptake of energy efficiency measures. We see the importance of role of commitment of owner-occupied companies, also the importance of role of well-trained external experts and consultants. So we have a broad field, we have a lot of impacting factors which drive the success of energy management, energy auditing in those companies. So lots of work ahead of us, but also some silver lining at the horizon, I think, some solutions there. The topic is gaining more attention due to the evident climate crisis which is ahead of us, and so action is needed, and SMEs are part of our industrial basis and need to be part of that action which has to be taken. I would love the opportunity to thank our speakers for answering all the questions very patiently, and we had a lot of time for discussion, but I think it was a great panel discussion we had here. We had great presentations. I encourage all the audience to then also read the paper if they're published. You will find more detailed insights on the research there. So keep in contact, use the platforms. The next sessions will start in 30 minutes. So we're going to have another couple of sessions at ECEE's Industrial Efficiency today. I encourage you also to look perhaps beyond the borders of your individual panel. So although panel 3, of course, as a deputy panel leader here now, I have to say panel 3 is, of course, the core of this conference. As a co-chair of the conference, I encourage you to also visit other panels. You have the opportunity in the afternoon because there are parallel sessions without panel 3 interfering with that. So go there, see something perhaps beyond your individual perspective and learn something. This is what ECEE Summer Studies is for, providing evidence base. We've seen that today in a very great manner. I thank the speakers again and again. You don't hear the applause, which is a pity because the applause would be tremendous, I assume, and I would encourage the audience to be applauding. So right now it's just me thanking you, and I thank the audience for their questions. I thank the audience for being part of that panel, and thank you very much, and goodbye, and see you soon.
Thank you.